5 Hour Energy is energy on the go. Well, what if you're not going anywhere for a while? Then 5 Hour Energy is for getting stuff done while you're stuck at home, like doing an honest day's work for your boss. Getting rid of old clothes.
Oh, my old bell-bottoms.
Scouring the grout in your shower. Working out on that old stationary bike. And so much more. Go to the store or order online at shop5hourenergy.com. 5 Hour Energy. Energy for hunkering down.
I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa. Fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, proud members of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can find them at FTFPodNet on Twitter. You can find me, your host for the evening, Mr. Matthew Burning, at SportsFanaticMB on Twitter. We are just one of a ton of great podcasts associated with this network, some of which are Jim Day of FF Champs, Corey Parsons and Dr. Roto from Sirius XM Radio, Bob Lung of The Consistency Show, The Consistency Guide, which has just recently been released and is a great tool for all fantasy users, and of course the creator of the Midwest Fantasy Expo. You can find all of us and many, many more on fulltimefantasy.com. We are also proud to be partnering with expandtheboxscore.com. They have some of the best college football and NFL stats in the business. College football stats are very hard to find. If you follow me on Twitter, all the college profile stuff that you see me posting and stats that I post come from expandtheboxscore.com. It is a great website. Check them out. We're actually about to bring a guest on that is also partnered with expandtheboxscore.com, which I cannot wait for. I got Chris Stoops coming on. He is part of the Devy Delight podcast. He is an absolute great member of this community, and he kills it in the Devy side of things, and I'm excited to bring him on here. We're going to talk all about Devy prospects. We're going to be going through 3 conferences, giving you guys some of our top players and underrated players at every single position. Man, I can't wait to jump in and talk about this. I don't get to talk Devy enough, so I'm excited for a Devy-centric episode here. And I'm going to be doing it with Chris Stoops, who you can follow at Stoops1990 on Twitter. And we've got Chris Stoops with us. Stoops, what is going on, man? How are you doing living in this new America that everybody's calling home?
Yeah, it's insane. I'm trying to, make the best of it as I can. I'm here in San Antonio, so I followed the mayor's instructions of, stay home, stay safe, all that stuff. I just go out for the few days I work a week. And then obviously food, right? You got to get some food at some point. So go to the grocery store. But I've been playing a lot of Madden, to be completely honest. I've been watching Cheers on Netflix and playing a lot of Madden. So I've definitely turned the Dolphins franchise around.
I was going to say that.
Made them a competitor. I'm 11-1 right now. So I'm making that Super Bowl push here pretty quick.
I was going to say, you're making our mutual friend Jeremy Barker very proud. I saw the tweet that you posted the other day about that. So that's I was doing the same thing. I'm actually do you play Xbox or PlayStation?
Xbox.
Man, I might have to add you on here. So I do an online league with like 3 other dudes, and we just play like multiple seasons. Like we're in our 4th season right now, and we always try, and you've got some people who do a really good job of like pumping out real draft classes in the future. So we always try to download those draft classes and try and play it as real as possible. I'm playing with the Browns, and I've won 2 of the 3 championships so far. My other buddy won with the Panthers. We're always trying to look to bring people in. It's a lot of fun. I might have to see if you're interested in doing that, because it's a lot of fun doing stuff like that and playing other people online. We were just talking a little bit off air here, because I mentioned here in the beginning, the intro, that we're going to be talking about Devy players and the college football game in general. It's kind of what you excel at. You do a really good job in this community about talking about college players and the college game in general, and the Devy Delight with Ricky. What are your thoughts, and what do you think this could do to I don't think it'll hurt the college game necessarily, but what it could do to even, for instance, some of the players we're going to talk about today, if we don't have a college football season in 2020, because those rumors have really started to come up here the past couple weeks that we may be looking at a year without college football.
Yeah, it's going to be different for sure. I mean, we're so used to the time coming, right? We're ready for that week 1, whereas some people, week 0 doesn't really matter of college football. But if we have no college football, it's going to create some extra work, especially for Devy specific podcasts, kind of what are we going to do at that aspect? But even just the prospects themselves, like if they still have these rules, I don't want to call them laws per se, because it's not quite to that level, but social distancing and this, that, and the other, they can't even technically go and train, right? Like with a quarterback or with other receivers, with other players. It's going to make it a little bit harder for them as far as that aspect goes. And I'd almost have to think, kind of like what they did, the NCAA did with, I think, with the basketball and all these other athletes right now. They kind of gave them that extra year of eligibility. I'd almost think they'd have to go that same route with, the football players and volleyball players and other aspects like that. So it's going to definitely add another wrinkle to the already difficult task of getting ready for a college football season and preparing themselves for the NFL at the next level and stuff. So it's going to be very interesting. Like you've even said, we were talking before we clicked record, it's crazy to live in a time like this, right? When something's going on, and these are the kind of things we're talking about, as opposed, this team's going to win the national championship, or this player's going to break out. Well, are they going to play? It's just crazy to live in a time like that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, oh man, like I was thinking about it, and just the fact that how that could really change the NFL draft for next year, too, because you got all these players. I mean, you got guys like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Some of the other guys, Max Borgi, Travis Etienne, Justin Ross, like all those guys coming out, they're going to be fine. We all know they're going to be first-round picks whenever they come out, and they're good to go. But it could really affect a lot of the bottom-tier guys, which I also think is going to affect those guys this year, too, just due to the fact that you're looking at a lot of these guys who go in the later rounds aren't get to do these pro days and get recognized like they would in the past. Some guys who go to smaller schools that are at the Alabama pro days to help out quarterbacks or whatever else is going on, that they're not getting the looks that they're used to getting by NFL teams because of everything going on. So yeah, it's insane to think that how much this one thing that nobody was really talking about, or it didn't even seem, I shouldn't say like a big deal, but it didn't seem like it was going to become what it has become, you could say almost a month ago. And then now here we are, everybody just doing their best to literally, like, it's funny, you leave, like I work in a delivery service I've talked about, and a lot of times you leave and a customer will look at you and say, hey, stay safe, stay healthy, have a great day. And I never in my life would have thought someone would be saying that to me, and it'd be like realistically a big deal that they're saying that because you do want to stay safe and stay healthy. So yeah, it is an insane time, and I could not imagine though. I can't. I'm telling you right now, I don't know what I'd do if we don't have college football on Saturdays this year. I mean, it would just be a huge blow, especially being a huge Buckeyes fan as I am, with us coming so close like we did last year, and then to probably lose out. Because I would still think, you've got to think, right, like someone like Justin Fields, who, yeah, you may get that eligibility back for another year. There's no way he's coming back to college next year if they don't have a season. He's going. He's going to go into the NFL draft because he's still going to be a top 5 pick at worst, I would think.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think, him and a Lawrence, they've done what they need to do, I think, right?
Yeah.
They've shown what they're capable of doing. They're a lock. They would go. I agree with you. There's no reason for them to come back because, again, you risk that injury, potential injury, and then at that point, what happens, from there. So, no, I would completely agree with you. They would especially Fields and Lawrence, they'd be going no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope it doesn't come to that point, because I know neither one of us wants that. As big college fans as we are, I know we both enjoy the college game more than the NFL game, and obviously the NFL, if it came back, which it does seem like they're really leaning toward being able to find a way to make it work, so it would be at least good to have football on Sundays. But we both want to see those games on Saturday. So I mentioned in the intro here that we're going to just talk about our top players in the Pac-12, ACC, and SEC, and then some underrated players as well. It's kind of a just preview for a show that we're hoping we're going to be able to do. We were just talking about this off air. My hope is, for those of you who listened to the episode I had with Ricky a couple weeks ago, to bring both you guys on again. You guys do a great job on the Devy Delight and talk like a full college preview. But me and Ricky focus more on draft prospect guys. Me and you are going to focus fully on college football, which is awesome. I love doing that. Rarely do I get to do a Devy-centric episode here, and it's my own podcast, which is weird that I have to say this is very rare for me. But I love it, and I'm excited to do it. So I'm going to kick it off. I always let the guests go first. We have a couple players. I know you and, if I remember correctly, because I do listen to the Devy Delight, you and Ricky don't ever look at each other's list beforehand, right? Like, you don't know who you guys are going to talk about?
No, we don't. Well, so, okay. 9 times out of 10, no.
Okay.
We're doing some player profile stuff right now. We do have a sheet set to the side, and we've talked about that, right? Like, so, hey, I'm going to talk about this guy, talk about that guy. But when we do this type of a thing, or if we do rankings or anything like that, no, we keep it a secret. It kind of adds to the I don't know, level of, you know, the curiosity behind it and where we're going to put players. So no, most of the time we do not share the names. It just kind of started that way, and we've kind of just stuck with it.
Nice. So I've seen your names. I obviously sent out a show sheet to you on how I was going to kind of attack this episode, and you put in who you're going to talk about. So there's a couple guys that we have shared, so I may add a guy here and there just so we talk about a couple different players. But for the most part, we actually have a lot of different players, which I think is good. It gives the listeners a little bit more. But there's one running back, and I want to see if you can guess who it is that or just guess the conference, because I don't want to give the name away. But there's one running back you have on your list that I was really surprised you had on there. Not because you wouldn't know who they were, but I just don't see a lot of people talking about it. I've loved this kid. So any guess what conference it is that we may have the same running back lined up on here?
So there's 2 of them that I think it could be. And my guess is going to be, I'm going to go, I think it's in the SEC.
No, so it's
No.
I'm not gonna lie, I barely know anything about the underrated running back you have on there. I'm actually excited to hear about this guy because I have no idea. I know who he is, but I don't know much about him.
Okay. Then I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Okay.
My other guess would have been ACC, but
no, it's a Pac-12 guy. It's a Pac-12.
Damn.
It's your underrated Pac-12 running back.
Then I know who it is now.
Now, yeah. All right. So, that's
who it is.
We are going to start with the Pac-12. We're going to go down the list: quarterback, running back, wide receiver. We'll flip, go back and forth here. So we're going to start with the top players. Who is your top quarterback here in the Pac-12?
Yeah, it's the top quarterback that I've got in the Pac-12 is Keaton Slavis out of USC. Man, he does still obviously have a little bit of competition there with JT Daniels, but I just think with what he did last season, the job's his. I mean, he had, over 3,500 passing yards, 30 passing touchdowns. He had 137 first downs. Like he really went out. He did what he needed to do. And when players get that opportunity, right, and they take advantage of it and they really, really just kind of take it to the next level, that speaks volumes for what their potential could be, years down the road, obviously. So I just think with what he did last season and what his potential is, and he's getting some serious players back. One of the guys I'll talk about here in a little bit, but he's getting some serious prospects back on that offense. And I've said this before on other episodes and even on Twitter. If USC isn't good this year, there's something wrong, further away from just the players, right? Because the talent's there, man. They've got more talent than a lot of programs do, especially in the Pac-12. But I think Keaton's the guy this year. I think he's going to definitely keep that starting role, and I don't think JT Daniels is going to really be, challenging him for that spot, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, that's That was kind of going to be an interesting battle for me, I think, going into this year, but I think I agree with you. I do think with what Slovis did last year, he's probably going to end up being the one who ends up winning that battle and is going to be the guy for them. I went a little bit chalk here in mine. He's a guy, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I put up an article for the Dynasty Nerds, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago now, about my top Devy quarterbacks, and I'm going to stick with Jaden Daniels out of Arizona State. I liked what I saw out of him. I know you guys actually talked about him recently on the Devy Delight. Obviously had some good games, did have some kind of bad games, but he was very young. Going in this year's sophomore, I think he's just going to be I shouldn't say incredibly good, but I do think he's going to improve with Herm Edwards and everything. I really like this kid, his mobility, his accuracy, his arm talent, the way he throws on the run. I just think he's going to be really good this year. 17-2, so a 9 touchdown to interception ratio. I like it. I'm a little worried about him losing Brandon Ayuk this year, but I think he's going to bounce back and be just fine next year. Going to be really good. So he's my top quarterback here. There was another guy that I wanted to go, but I ended up putting him as my underrated quarterback, so I'm excited to get to him in a minute. Who is your top running back?
Yeah, my top running back is Max Borghi out of Washington State. I talk about it all the time on the Devy Delight. I absolutely love running backs who excel in the pass catching aspect of the game. I mean, when you have the abilities that he has out of the backfield, whether it be running the ball or catching the ball, absolutely love that. Just watching him on film, and he's a pretty physical runner while he does have the ball in his hands. And I think this season, I don't think he's going to see the 96 targets that he saw last season. I don't think he sees that. I do think he still sees, anywhere between that 60 to 70 range. He's still going to get the ball. He excels in it. They got to get him the ball in that aspect, right? So I do think he's going to get a little bit more rushing attempts this season, which I think is going to help show his abilities to the NFL scouts. So I definitely want to see that aspect come out of it from there. But just he had 89.6 catch percent last season. That's absolutely phenomenal. So he saw a lot of targets, but he caught quite a few of them. I mean, let's just call it 90%, right? 597 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns through the air, while 11 rushing touchdowns. So you got to love seeing that out of a guy. And I think he's going to continue to be the focal point of that offense this year. I mean, he's definitely a guy. If you're in, Devy drafts, I'm actually we haven't got to the Devy aspect now, but we're in the middle of a startup draft for a Devy league I joined. So he's a guy that I'm absolutely going to definitely be targeting. He's a guy to just continue to watch, and I think he's, like I said, he's gonna show what he can do on the ground. He's got the abilities. He just, when you had a Mike Leach style offense, I mean, they throw the ball 700 times a game. So getting the rock, to run the ball, a little bit few and far between. But I think this year it's definitely gonna be a different scheme with new head coach in there. So it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what he can do on the ground.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm actually really excited about for him. How close? I'd imagine you have Etienne and Hubbard above him in your rankings right now?
I do, yes, I do.
So how much, if you say everybody seems to think that they're going to be a little bit more run heavy with him with Leach leaving, if he shows that he can be just as good running the ball as he showed last year receiving, how close does he move up to those two, or do you still think he's a step down from those guys?
I think Harris I would still have above him, but I think he could jump Hubbard. I do love Hubbard, as far as his running ability. I mean, we saw it this year. He was unbelievable. But I think if Max can go in and really, really show and prove that he is able to run the ball quite a bit more and excel at it, I think he would probably jump Hubbard. I don't think I could move him above Harris or Etienne at that point. Etienne I think is a whole different ballgame, right? I think he's in his own little level up there, but those guys right there, I think Borghi could definitely make his way up to the top tier of guys, right? I think he could start jumping over some people.
All right, for me, I'm sticking in the state of Oregon for both of my guys. So my top guy is C.J. Verdell. He was a guy I thought might come out this past year in the draft, decided to stay, redshirt junior. I know some people aren't as high on him, but I do think that he can kind of do it all. 109 first downs last year, 86% catch percentage. I think, 39 catches on 47 targets is what it's showing here. So he can run the ball. I do think he's a little bit better pass catcher than he is a runner. I want to see more out of him this year. I'm interested to see. I'm really interested in him this year with Herbert gone, how they're going to style this offense and how good he is going to do with Oregon with Herbert being gone. I do think they kind of leaned more on Herbert at times with how good. I love Justin Herbert if you don't know that, so I'm huge on him. I think he was a really big reason on why they were as successful as they were at times. But I think he's got a really good low center of gravity, really good athleticism, great balance, speed, acceleration. I think he's got it all, and I'm really excited to see if they lean on him more this year with Herbert gone and if he can kind of carry this Oregon offense. So that is my top running back here for the Pac-12. Who is your top wide receiver?
Yeah, my top wide receiver, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. One of the best things, I saw a YouTube clip on him months ago. It was basically all the St. Brown brothers together, right? And my favorite part of that whole video was when the interviewer was asking him, well, which one of you is the best? He was the first, no hesitation, first one says, I am. And then, of course, they all, the other two start laughing, whatever. And he kind of has that straight face, like, no, like, it's me. So I just love that confidence, right? Is a player who can portray that type of confidence, whether it be on the field or even in an interview. I think that just speaks volumes for their, mindset. But when you look at his stats last season, he saw 103 targets. 74.8 catch percent there. That's pretty phenomenal. 1,042 yards with 6 receiving touchdowns. So he's definitely able to get the job done through the air. And obviously, building that chemistry with his quarterback in some fashion. I know right now it's, a little bit different as we've talked about countless amounts of times, but he even runs the ball, right? It's not going to be much. He's obviously a receiver, but he had 7 rushing attempts last year, 60 rushing yards and a touchdown. So they get him the ball any way they possibly can. So to me, when you go to the next level, you're going to have those gadget style players, but at the same time, it doesn't always transition in that level. So that's why I like to see what they can do from the receiving aspect of it. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is just phenomenal. He's definitely going to be someone to keep an eye on. And the big thing about him, I love big play threats, right? I love guys who can stretch the field and either make plays after the catch or just, beat their defenders and make those long catches and get some touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns that went 21 plus yards or more, and he had 14 total receptions that went for 21 plus yards. So he's able to do everything. He's got 27 receptions that went 4 to 7 yards. So he can get you those short yardage gains. He can get you those big yard, gains. He's kind of a do-it-all guy, right? You just get him the ball, he's going to make it happen. So he's definitely my top receiver in the conference.
Yeah, so he was mine as well. I forgot that you had him on there. So I'm going to pivot and talk about a guy that I really like that's on the same team as him, and that's Drake London. I really like London, and I see that you've got him on as your underrated. So I'm interested to see what you have to say about him when we get to that part of it. I went a different way, but I agree with everything you said on Brown. I think he's going to be a stud. Do you think he's going to for sure be the one now with Pittman gone, or do you think, why can I not think of his name now at the moment?
Vaughns?
Yeah, or do you think Vaughns is going to be the guy with Pittman gone?
I think St. Brown is going to be the top target guy, but I don't think when they line him up, right, I don't think he's going to be technically the number one. I think Vaughns is going to be the number one guy per se when you lay it all out, as far as the positional tree goes, whatever. But I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be the guy. I think he's going to be the top target getter, but not necessarily, how they always list him out, he's the one receiver, he's the
right.
2, so on and so forth. I think Vaughns is going to be the number one guy, but I think St. Brown is the guy that all the defenses are going to focus on. They're going to double him quite a bit more. He's just got that athleticism, but so does Vaughns, So
yeah,
that's what I'm telling you. This USC offense, man, like they've got so much talent. There's really no excuse that they don't make I'm not saying a push for a championship. I'm not saying that far. There's some other pieces they've got to get, but
right.
They've got to do much better than what they did last season.
Yeah, I know you're all in on USC and I believe Florida as well, right? You're the one in on Florida.
Yeah.
It's not Ricky. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I'm interested.
And I'm not even I'm an A&M fan. We all know that.
Oh, I know.
So it's just like there's a whole other. Anyway, that's a whole different topic. I tell people all the time I could talk hours about my frustrations and love for A&M. But anyway, yeah, no, Florida I think is a team that's one to keep an eye on for sure, and USC obviously.
So just one thing I wanted to add on St. Brown, just a ridiculous 20.51% dominator rating as well last year, which is just ridiculous. But Drake London, just a couple things on him. I actually, I don't know if he's going to have a huge year this year because of Vaughns and Brown, but I do think he's a guy you need to seriously watch. I think he takes a huge step forward this year. He had a bunch of really big plays last year, being kind of the third and fourth option for the Trojans. I think he will easily be the third option this year and be able to take a big step forward next year. But I do think he is just a really good player, dual sport athlete, fluidity. He's got great length. His sophomore had a 13.63% dominator rating last year. 21% of his plays were over that 21 yards you were talking about with Brown earlier. Only one of them resulted in a touchdown, though, but did do a ton of work in the 8 to 13 yard range as well, 31% with 12 catches. So he's a really good wide receiver. Like I said, Brown, I'm right there with agreeing with you on Brown. So just want to throw a little bit of love towards somebody else in this conference. Our favorite position to talk about, we both have the same person, so I'm just going to let you take it here on the tight end. I feel like our tight end discussions are probably going to be pretty bad for all of these, except for when we get to the SEC. But who is your top tight end here in the Pac-12?
Yeah, my top tight end is Brant Keithy. I had to figure out how to say his last name. I hate mispronouncing names, so I watched some films and luckily they threw his name out. But Brant Keithy, Utah tight end. Dude's it's hard to explain, but like he's just okay. I heard in a video, right? George Kittle Jr. He's quick, he's agile, he can play all over the field. He's kind of a little gadget tight end, which is kind of a weird thing to say, right? But watching him play, it's just phenomenal. He was a running back in high school, which I thought was pretty interesting, but they also lined him, or he played running back. I shouldn't say he was a running back, but they played him at running back. They played him at receiver. They played him at tight end. I mean, they played him everywhere, right? And when you're at high school, obviously when you're an athlete, like you're the guy. They're going to just get to the ball in the hands and let you go. That's just what they do at high school. But they moved him to tight end officially here at Utah, and he just had a phenomenal season from the tight end aspect, because you think about it, right? A lot of programs don't utilize the tight end, which is why we generally won't talk about tight ends on Devy episodes or just in general, unless you're kind of just standing out above everybody else. So 602 receiving yards last year, 6 touchdowns, 34 receptions on 42 targets. That's 81%. He's got an 82% catch rate his whole entire career. So definitely love seeing that from a tight end, sure-handed. He's able to block, he's able to get the blocks and create separation for his running backs or his other receivers whenever he's not going out for a route. So I absolutely love seeing that. He accounts for 21 first downs this last season, which again, if you've listened to, the Devy Delight, we talk about first downs a lot, right? We talk about them all the time. So you definitely want to have a tight end that's able to get those short yardage plays. He's able to get those first downs. But a thing I find pretty awesome from him is his 21 plus yard reception count. He's got 13 receptions that went for 21 plus yards, and 4 of those went for touchdowns. So when you talk about it, right, like I said, he's able to spread the field at the tight end position. He's just athletic, right? You get him the ball and he's able to get it done. So the fact that I found out through another video was that he played running back in high school, just kind of showed his athleticism and what he's really able to do. So love him, Brant Keithy out of Utah.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you could pronounce his last name. One of the, as you guys just heard in the new Open that is debuting on this podcast, much thanks to you guys as well. My goodness, his name just jumped out of my head. What is it?
Andy?
Gabriel? Is it Gabriel?
Oh my God. Yeah, I know you're talking about Gabe.
Yeah, because he did your guys' Open, your new Open on the Devy Delight, yep. And so I reached out to him. I was like, dude, I love what you guys did for them. Could you do one for me? And he did, and I've got it. It's dropped on this episode. And as he makes fun of me in that song, I am horrible at pronouncing names. It's ridiculously bad. You could have told me 2 seconds ago how to say that. I already forgot. You said is it Keithy?
Yeah.
See, I would have been like, I swear, if I would have been going first, I'm like, all right, Brant Keith here is my guy. So I'm really bad with that. But I agree with everything you said. I think for me, the most things that stood out there, as you mentioned, was his blocking. Or that fact that he was willing to go out there and block, which is obviously a big key to the tight end game and something that's really going to help him out. But his route running in hands is what really stood out to me. I think he's going to be really good. And I agree with you, though. With Devy, not even just Devy, almost rookie players or rookie drafts, you're really not focusing on the tight end position as much. I mean, I keep going back to the year George Kittle came out. His ADP was, I believe, a late third or early fourth round pick, and look at what he is now. So sometimes it just takes longer. You don't always get those Evan Ingrams who, even though he's kind of fallen off here, I know he was like an ADP of a second round the year he came out a couple years ago. You don't always get that, so it's kind of hard to focus in on these guys because it's just the game can change so much from the college level to the NFL level. But I agree with you. He's the guy who really kind of stood out for me in this conference. So let's talk about our underrated guys. We've got one guy on our list that is the same. So once we get to him, we will just kind of converse, and that is the running back. So who's your underrated quarterback for the Pac-12?
So my underrated quarterback, it's Jake Bentley. Yes, he's been around for some years, right? He was over at South Carolina for a little while, and he has his moments, where he does look a little bit sketchy. But I just think watching his film as a whole, I think he's got the talent to definitely, especially at Utah with, as we just talked about, a pretty solid tight end. He's got some other guys there. Yes, Zach Moss, love him or hate him, he's gone. So he's got to fill that running back role there. But I just overall, I think Jake Bentley definitely can get it done. I would love to see him clean up the turnover aspect, especially when you look at, the 2017 season, for example. He had 12 interceptions, right? So he definitely turns the ball over, and that's something you don't want to see. But overall, watching his film, he makes the throws. I think he's got some good arm strength to him. So I think he's able to make it happen. It's going to be interesting to see how he comes back from the injury. That's the reason, Mr. Was it Helinski? He took over that job there over at South Carolina. But Bentley coming back, definitely rehabbing the injury and having a little bit more time to even potentially get a little bit more mentally strong, I guess you could say. Because sometimes whenever, as much as we don't want to admit it, we read media, right? I mean, we do, obviously, because we put a lot of it out there per se. But, these players, they read the media. They listen to the news. They hear what people say about him. So he's definitely been someone that's been questioned, but I just think he's someone that can really get it done. I mean, you look at the 2018 season, had over 3,100 passing yards, 27 touchdowns. He did throw, again, 14 interceptions, so he definitely does turn the ball over, but he can do it in the running game. He's obviously not a run-first quarterback, but in that same season, he had 64 rushing attempts, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. When you go to the 2017 season, 73 rush attempts, 85 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. Now, again, sounds like a lot of rushing attempts, the way the college game, tracks all that stuff. It's not necessarily a true run per se. They definitely, I'll be completely honest with you. How they determine what a run is, I'm not sure. But obviously once they cross the line of scrimmage, to me, that's a run. But at the same time, that's not how they always, log it. So he's able to get it done on the ground. And I think that's definitely something that can help separate himself from some other guys. But as mentioned, there are some things he's got to clean up, right? Definitely some interceptions, having the 14 and 12 in those 2 seasons, respectively. He's got to clean it up, but I think he is someone to definitely keep an eye on throughout the season, especially going into a fresh start. I think that's going to be big for him.
I like that. I like that call. That is that's an interesting one. It was a guy that I was thinking about. Mine is a guy that I had in my article. I'm big on him, and this guy could end up really kind of making me look bad, but also look really smart. And that's and guys, I apologize now if I butchered the last name. Grant Gunnell out of Arizona. 6'5", 222 pounds. He's a sophomore. Did not play much last year. He was sitting behind Khalil Tate for the most part. Did get games here and there. I believe he started in the USC game. I don't remember if it was because Tate got hurt or what happened. I've only seen a little bit of his stuff here and there, but his arm strength, the way that he can sling it is just ridiculous. He's extremely accurate. I love his pocket mobility. The one thing I don't like from what I saw of him on tape was he seems to stare down his receivers a lot, which obviously but he was a freshman last year. That's something that I would imagine is going to be improved upon. If you're taking him in any kind of Devy draft, you're going to have to wait multiple years, and if it's a single QB draft, I would not at all consider taking him. I'd let him go and maybe take him in a couple years if he proves himself. But from what I saw in the times that he was out on the field with some of the lasers he was throwing downfield, I really like this guy. I think he's got a ton of upside in that 2022 class, which is going to likely be stacked with guys like Slovis and Daniels and everything. Gunnell's the guy I think is going to be a little bit of a sneaky upside guy in that 2022 QB draft. So that's the guy that I'm really all in on. I really liked what I saw out of him in the limited amount we saw him here in the 2019 season. All right. this running back, man, I'm excited about this kid. He's the guy that I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast. Loved him his freshman year. He had a huge freshman year. Looked, in my opinion, like one of the best running backs in college that freshman year. Last year, but split time with Artavius Pierce a lot there for Oregon State. Did not have a great year, but I think he's going to have a huge bounce back year, and is a guy that I think is a huge buy low in Devy leagues, and a guy that you might even possibly still be able to draft in your Devy drafts, because he may not be owned by people, especially with the year he had last year. Stoops, who is your underrated running back?
Yeah, my underrated running back is Jermar Jefferson out of Oregon State. Like you said, that freshman season that he had was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, over 1,300 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, 61 first downs. Again, that's a big, big number, in my opinion, from a running back, 61 first downs. Got it done in the receiving game as well, 25 receptions on 32 targets, 78% catch rate there. 147 receiving yards, no receiving touchdowns, but again, it is what it is. In the end, you'd love to see some receiving touchdowns, but the fact that he was able to get that done and show his ability there, I think was phenomenal. But like you said, when you jump to the 2019 season, definitely dropped off a little bit. And if I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, did he have some injuries this year that might have kept him out of a game or so? Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like he missed some time with an injury.
I don't remember if he missed any games, but I do know that he was struggling with stuff. I think that's why Pierce started to take over more and more as we move through the year.
Yeah, so you still look at the stats. I mean, 685 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, right? That's okay, so that's not the 1,300 plus yards that he had his freshman season, but to me, it is a drop off. It's a pretty drastic drop off from where he was, but I still think that's a solid number, especially like you said, sharing the backfield with someone else. Numbers are just going to drop, but he's still got a 75% catch rate there. He only had 9 receptions, but 83 yards, so he's definitely getting the ball. He's making some plays. He's able to do it, man. He's a hard-nosed runner. I really love that he seems like he's that type of running back that's just not afraid of contact. You always see those running backs that want to play more east to west, and I think he's more of a north-south runner that can go east to west, right? He's got the moves, but I think he's just more of a hard-nosed, just physical type runner. He's going to get the job done. He's going to get you those yards, whether you need some big plays, which isn't really his forte per se. But when you look at 0 to 3 yards, for example, he had 62 rushing attempts there, and 4 to 7 yards, he had 46 rushing attempts. So he's definitely there to get those first downs, and he's definitely there to get those short yardage gains. So I definitely love what I've seen out of him. I mean, we've got him at 5'10", 214 on expand the box scores, so he's got some weight behind him. And who knows? He might even put on a couple more pounds. And it's crazy to think, right? There's some guys out there that have put on more weight and they've gotten faster, which is a weird thing to think, because usually when you think more weight, you're going to get slower. But it's just the way these guys train and with the certain people that they have. And I think he's one that can do that. Put on a little bit more weight to just get that extra physicality, but he could still gain some speed if he's trained properly, via his guys out there. But like you said, expect him to have a bounce back season. I think he's going to definitely prove that freshman season wasn't a fluke. I think he's deal. And again, like you said, I feel like he was talked about his freshman season. Obviously, when you look at the numbers, it's like, well, yeah, he's going to be the guy. But then it just kind of like people just dropped off because he didn't have those same numbers. But he's still the same guy, right? It's not like he, changed his, DNA. Like it's that player's still there. So I think he's going to have that bounce back season, and I think he's going to prove that wasn't a fluke season for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'll even go back to, like, I know people, like I said, I've been posting stuff about him even last year throughout the year when he was having a bad year, and in this offseason been saying, hey, don't forget about this guy with what he did his freshman season. A guy that I've talked about on this podcast, I know and Ray Garvin, he's kind of become like the king of Devy with everything that he does and the content that he puts out. I'm in a Devy league with him where Jermar Jefferson is actually still available to draft. I've picked up some extra Devy picks for the draft that we'll obviously have here in a couple weeks, and he's one of the guys I'm planning on trying to go get. I had tried to trade up. We did a startup last year, and I tried to actually trade back into the 4th round to take him as my last pick, because I don't remember. I think I took Kylan Hill, I believe was my last pick. I can't remember exactly who I love as well. And it was like Kylan Hill or Jermar Jefferson, and I didn't think anybody was going to take Jefferson because it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of people on him, which is crazy to me I'm after, as we both talked about here, the freshman year that he had. I think he needs to be talked about more often, and I do think, obviously, I'm with you 100% that after this year, I think he's going to be talked about. He's not going to be the Etienne or probably even Borgie or Hubbard or Harris, but I think he's, in my opinion, like right below those guys. Like he's in that tier 2, and I think he really has a chance to be the top of that tier 2 right behind those guys this year. I really like Jefferson. I'm all in on him. Who is your underrated wide? Well, I know who your underrated wide receiver is. We just I talked about him earlier in Drake London. But what do you have on Drake London? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so my thing is, like, he's still good. So he was actually, like you had said, he was kind of that fourth option, right? But with Pittman gone, Drake London, essentially by default, but I think talent-wise, he would have been there anyway. He's still going to be that number 3 guy behind Vaughns and behind St. Brown. But just the fact that he came out his freshman season and did what he did, because you see a lot of these freshman receivers, really freshman players at all, freshman guys, it doesn't matter the position, but especially at receiver, they're going to get the opportunities and they don't really do much with it. He's one that definitely came on and showed that he's the real deal. You know, he's able to get it done. I mean, he had 39 receptions on 45 targets. That's 87% catch rate, 567 receiving yards, and 5 receiving touchdowns for 19 first downs. And the one thing I really, really do like about him is you kind of have these players that are either a big play threat or, you know, they're going to get you those short to mid yardage gains. He kind of does it all, right? You know, he's a big play threat. He's got the speed. He's definitely got the size. I mean, 6'5". Only 205 listed on Expand the Box Score, so definitely want to see, obviously, get a little bit more weight to him, but he makes it work for him. But when you look at the touches by yards, I mean, he had 8 receptions that went for 21 yards or more. Only one of them did turn into a touchdown, but I mean, having only 39 receptions and 8 of them to go 21 plus yards is pretty phenomenal. He had 8 that went 14 to 20 yards, and then 12 of them went 8 to 13 yards. So he's making it happen on any aspect, whether it's short, mid, long. It doesn't really make a difference. He's definitely getting the job done, and I think his target share is going to go up drastically. I don't have Pittman's numbers pulled up, but I'd have to think he was anywhere between the 90 to 110 target range, maybe more, maybe a little bit less, but it's definitely Pittman was a top guy in that offense, right? So him gone, I think Drake London's going to take a lot of those, targets that are going to be vacant now. So he's definitely someone that I honestly haven't heard. I'd almost go as far as anybody, yes, there's going to be the one or two, but I don't get to see everyone that talks about him, but he's definitely not been talked about enough. I think I watched some. Again, I go to YouTube, just kind of watch either some highlights or if I'm lucky enough, find those game films. Definitely love seeing some game film on guys because you see more than just the highlights. But he was getting it done. He was blowing past some people, and you see it in their, I don't know what they call them, but like their spring games. I know every college kind of calls them something special, but he's definitely getting out there and he's making it happen. Again, these are last year's games and everything, but Drake London's a guy to definitely keep an eye on, and he was the one I have underrated, but needs to be talked about for sure.
Yeah, I actually posted a tweet on him not too long ago about not to sleep on this kid because I can't remember what game it was. It was a game he caught 3 touchdowns and he made like a beautiful over-the-shoulder catch, like over a defender, and that's what I clipped that and posted it with the tweet just to kind of remind everybody, like, hey, this kid, he may have gotten overshadowed a little bit by Vaughns and Pittman with what they did last year, but this kid's going to be a stud. Speaking of Pittman, that's where I'm going to go. Micah Pittman out of Oregon. I'm huge. It's funny, as big a fan as I am of the Buckeyes, I'm secretly like a huge Oregon Ducks fan for some reason. I don't know why, but I've been a fan for a long time, so I pay a lot of attention to them. It's got to be the jerseys. It probably is. I mean, I feel like people tend to make fun of me when I say stuff like this, but because I am a diehard, but like my days are ruined. Like when that Clemson game happened, I was already sick with the flu, but I wanted to die. Like that would do. I still don't even remember what actually happened, but I was at the game. Obviously, that was the year that Jerry World had just opened up down here, and they had the national championship game for the Buckeyes and the Ducks. It was Cardell Jones versus Marcus Mariota. I ended up taking my dad and my little brother with us so we could go watch the national championship games. We're all huge Buckeye fans, and I remember even saying as walking in, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a good time regardless, because even if the Buckeyes don't win, like, I'd love to see Marcus Mariota and the Oregon Ducks kind of win that championship, because they had been close, and that was back in the Chip Kelly days with all that stuff. So I've always liked the Ducks, and I'm a huge Herbert fan, as I mentioned earlier, so I pay very close attention to those games because I think Herbert's extremely underrated. Micah Pittman didn't get a lot of run last year, but I think he was dealing with the shoulder injury, I believe is what it was. He's a younger brother of Michael Pittman Jr., who we've been talking about, who had 101 catches. I meant to say that before I started talking about this, as you brought up with how many targets are now going to be free with him leaving. But Micah Pittman for the Ducks, solid acceleration. He's got a really good release. He does a good job of keeping DBs off him with his hands, and he can win with deep speed. I think he's going to be the one this year for Oregon. Again, we don't know what Oregon's going to be without Herbert there, so that's kind of why I'm excited to watch and see what happens with him and Verdell there. But I think Pittman is a guy who I keep kind of focusing on this 2022 class, it seems. I think could be a very sneaky guy in that 2022 class that I don't think a lot of people are talking about here in the Pac-12, especially with all the guys that USC has. It looks like they can field, at times 4 to 5 wide receivers out there. So Micah Pittman is my underrated guy. Do you have an underrated tight end?
So, no, not necessarily. I went through and I was like, all right, so I'm trying to look at some other tight ends, that may be underrated. And I'll be honest, I didn't. So I kind of went to the the high school prospects. And Washington's getting Mark Redmond. He was a 4-star prospect, number 7 tight end in the class. And he's 6'6", 239. His senior season, though, 72 receptions, 979 yards, and 13 touchdowns. So he's not so much underrated because we haven't seen him on the college level, but he's just someone, if you have a super deep Devy league, for example, it's kind of one of those, especially if it's tight end premium league. He's kind of a guy, hey, let's, I'm late rounds or I'm in an auction draft and I've got $1, let's pick him up kind of thing. That's more of where a Mark Redmond would be right now. But so yes, but no kind of aspect. It was just kind of a super deep dive into a guy to keep an eye on potentially.
Gotcha. Well, I like that you went Redmond because I had on mine was Cade Otton. Just because I thought maybe he'll be able to do something with Bryant moving on. He's a redshirt junior, so again, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I don't watch a lot of tight ends play. That's not really my thing. So I just kind of was going for a guy that I thought might be able to step up into a role with the guy leaving. He seems to be rated pretty highly by some people, so that's kind of the guy that I went to. There's a couple people on Dynasty Nerds who are, for whatever reason, think he's going to be good. I'm going to trust their opinions over mine because they've actually watched him and I haven't. So let's talk about the ACC, where obviously the best quarterback is pretty easy. And who do you have there as your top quarterback in the ACC?
I've got Trevor Lawrence. It's Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. I mean, what else is there to say? We've seen it for 2 years now. I mean, coming on freshman season, doing what he did, continuing it sophomore season. And the one thing I really did like to see going into that sophomore season, he really improved in the running game, right? He definitely stepped it up and showed that he's able to do it. And the biggest thing I love, and we talk about this all the time on the Devy Delight, he gets down, he slides, he does not try and, gain the extra 1 or 2 yards. And I'm not trying to say quarterbacks are soft, but when they take those big hits, that's when they find that injury, right? So I like how he was able to get down, but it's Trevor Lawrence. What more? Everyone knows Trevor Lawrence. Everyone knows he's going to be the guy. People have even said coming out of high school, just go straight to the pros. You don't even need to come to college. He was that type of a quarterback. So love what he's done. Definitely excited to see, what he's able to build on this season. I mean, that Clemson team, top to bottom, they just keep. It's like I've said about Alabama, right? They don't rebuild, they just reload. Yeah. They've got those guys just ready to go. So, T. Higgins is gone. No, don't worry about it. We've got the next guy up. We've got this guy. It's just how that defense works, or that team and offense and defense, but how Clemson works. They just reload. They don't rebuild. Yeah,
same as Ohio State. I don't know why you had to go Alabama or Clemson.
Yeah, SEC bias.
Yeah, we have the same. Actually, funny enough, we have the same top player and same underrated. Though I imagine a lot of people like the underrated quarterback. Dude, I have him in my tier 1 of quarterbacks in the article that I put out for the Dynasty Nerds. So Trevor Lawrence with me too. I guess quick question: Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence, or is it even close for you?
All right, so it's funny. Ricky and I have actually had that debate, and both of us have been Trevor Lawrence, just no questions, it's Trevor Lawrence. But the more that we dive into it, it's Fields and Lawrence are closer than what people think.
I know. That's what I've been saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and this is bold, and maybe this is kind of off the top of the head. I think Fields and this is kind of a cheap comparison, is a better Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. I think Fields is a much better passer than what Cam Newton has been. Cam Newton gets it done, right? He's able to do it. I think Fields is a much better passer while having that elite running ability from the quarterback. So that's why, to me, it's not as far apart between Lawrence and Fields as what a lot of people say.
Yeah, for me, when I look at it, because, I mean, when I come out and say something like that, everybody just assumes I'm being my Ohio State bias, because I don't hide how much I love my Buckeyes. But for me, I think the one thing that separates them, and I know you can make the argument that Lawrence is very good at rushing. Matter of fact, if you look at his stats, his rushing stats are right there with Justin Fields. But there's just something about when Fields is running to me that he's a little bit more dangerous, and I kind of feel the reason I put him ahead of Trevor Lawrence for me is I have no doubt Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be the better NFL prospect all around, because I do think he is a better passer than Justin Fields. I don't think that's necessarily close. But I think Fields, when it comes to fantasy, is going to end up being possibly the better fantasy quarterback, which is why I continue to rank him ahead of Trevor Lawrence, because I think he just brings a little bit more versatility. And since we've seen the NFL game move more toward the college game, I think that's going to favor Fields when he goes to the next level. I mean, you look at what they've been able to do with guys like Lamar Jackson and possibly what they could do with Jalen Hurts. Now, both those guys are definitely more dynamic at running the ball than Justin Fields is, but I don't think he's too far of a step down from those guys, that if he goes into a right system and they build around him like Baltimore did with Lamar Jackson, I think Fields could be extremely dangerous. So I'm with you, though. I was just glad that you said that, because a lot of people, when you bring that up, they're like, nah, dude, it's not even close. It's Trevor Lawrence and then everybody else, where I think you can make an argument if you want that Justin Fields deserves to be right there or ahead of him. If you don't, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with taking Trevor Lawrence. The kid's going to be really good for a really long time. All right, who is your running back? Well, let's just talk about Clemson, because I feel like that's all who we have here. I mean, I went a different way at running back just because I wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit, but I agree with you. Etiennes he's amazing. He's going to be the one at the running back position this year. But what do you got on Etienne? Give us a little bit more on him.
So the first thing that I'm going to say that breaks my heart, and so you with Ohio State is me with A&M, right? What breaks my heart is Etienne was going to A&M. He was supposed to be going. And
I
then
did not know that.
The whole Sumlin, just a bunch of things, and then he went to Clemson. So first, let's get that out of the way. Broken heart, but he's a stud, right? And backtrack. He may not have, what he's doing at Clemson, he may not have done at A&M. Who knows? You know what I mean? So we don't know. We could always, make it up and say he would have. But no, right. He's an absolute monster. And the biggest thing that I absolutely loved, everyone's talking about, man, he can't catch the ball. He doesn't like catching the ball. He's afraid to catch the ball, whatever it may be. I think he proved to everybody this past season that it's not an issue, because I know that's why a lot of people would knock him, right? I mean, 2018 season, he had 1,400, plus rushing yards, 21 rushing touchdowns. This last season, 1,600 rushing yards, 19 rushing touchdowns, 71 first downs. But then you go to the receiving aspect. 36 receptions this past season for 427 yards on four touchdowns. But you go back to 2018, only had 10 receptions on 14 targets, still 71.4 catch rate there for only 65 yards though and a touchdown. So the fact that he got involved in the offense way more, in the passing game, I think is just huge. And as I said about Max, right, a running back that can catch the ball automatically jumps up a couple levels to me. It's just like you said, for quarterbacks, for example, the way that the NFL is changing, certain players are going to have a higher, fantasy value. Same thing with running backs. The NFL is kind of going that route where they like having those pass-catching backs, especially when they can still run the ball, right? That's whenever you kind of become that every down back, and you're going to get the ball no matter which way they want to do it, whether it's just running it, throwing it, makes no difference. You're on the field, and I think Travis Etienne's that guy. When you look at it, 11 of his 15 games, he caught 100% of his targets that were thrown his way, and 6 of those 11, he had 3 or more targets. So again, he's not getting those, 8-9 targets out of the backfield. It's still going to be a lower number, but that's just every single game that he's getting 2, 3, 4, 5 plus targets, in certain aspects. So he's definitely getting targeted pretty much every single week. And I think that's going to continue this season. I don't see that changing, especially with that Clemson offense just being as high powered, as it is.
Yeah. So I do want to ask you one question on him. Does it worry you at all at how, and again, again, as a Buckeyes fan, I know how good that defense was. Does it worry you at all that it seemed like against the better defenses, he does tend to struggle a little bit running the ball? I know a lot of people, if you were to just think about that game, you would think, well, hey, no, he had those two big plays that really kind of put the nail in the coffin for the most part against the Buckeyes. But those were actually passes. They were dump-offs by Trevor Lawrence that he ended up taking them. Neither one of those were runs. The Buckeyes actually did a really good job of shutting him down. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, so did LSU. Alabama the year before that in the national championship, or not the national championship game, I think they played in the semifinals, whatever it was. It does seem like at times he struggles against those better tier defenses. So does that worry you at all, especially with him being the guy that everybody's kind of talking about as the for sure one of this 2020 class?
It is a concern. I mean, it's got to be, right? Because whenever I look at more so lower tiered guys, right? So obviously Etienne is a tier one guy in my opinion, but whenever I look at lower tiered guys, I look at the big competition, right? Who are the top teams they played and what did they do? So that's always definitely going to be a concern, but I think given his full landscape of what he's able to do, I think he's going to be able to figure that out. Now, obviously Clemson is, a top tiered program. They've got, best of the best coaches, training facilities, everything. So, but it's not NFL either. So I think once he gets to that next level, and I think there's certain nuances to the game that he may not have learned yet, because again, college, you're not going to have everything. But if he gets to an NFL program, this is just a name. Like if he meets up with a Zeke, or if he meets up with, someone of that level, right? I'm not saying he's going to go to Dallas, but
right.
if he was with a running back like that, who can teach him, hey, all right, this defense, you got to look for this. You're able to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's going to help him. So it is a concern though, right? You want to be able to see someone go up against an Ohio State, an Alabama, whoever, it doesn't matter. You name a top program and excel. They don't need to go for 200 yards, but you still want to see him get, 85 rushing yards and a touchdown and some catches thrown in there. Something like that I think would be okay. But definitely whenever you start struggling against top competition, it's a concern. It's got to be. It's definitely something. But I think he's good enough to overcome that.
Let's see here. It's funny that you actually said that Madden League that me and you were talking. I don't remember if we were on air or off air now at this point, but when I was talking about that Madden League, the guy who was playing as the Cowboys actually drafted Travis Etienne to pair with Zeke. So that's actually kind of just funny in my head that you put those two together. For me, I went since you went Etienne, and obviously he is the top guy here, I just went with a guy that I think could take a big step forward next year, and that's Kenneth Walker out of Wake Forest. Mostly was behind Cade Carney, and then obviously Jamie Newman, who I'm going to talk about later if we get to the SEC, where we're kind of running a lot longer than I thought we were. We're just talking about some of these other players. I think he's got a chance to do something good for Wake Forest. He's got really good patience, elusiveness, vision, really good speed on all levels, and is a much better receiver than I think he gets credit for. So he's a guy I think could take a big step forward and be one of the better running backs in the ACC next year. Now that he's not, I think he's going to be the guy. He's not going to be behind Cade Carney anymore because he is gone. I think he's going to be the guy over. I think he was probably going to compete with Christian Beal, who is a sophomore. So I do think they're both. So Kenneth was a freshman last year. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now, and I was hoping my phone was going to work, and it's not. So, but I like Kenneth Walker. I've got him on here as a guy that I am looking forward to here for the ACC. And then continuing our trend of Clemson players, go ahead and give us your top-rated wide receiver.
Yeah, it's Justin Ross. His freshman season, we saw what he did. He had a solid freshman season, but once that playoff came around, that's when people really said, man, who's Justin Ross, right? And then from there, it was just Justin Ross is the guy. And you look at it, when you watch a Clemson game, in my opinion, yes, T. Higgins to me was the number one guy on that team. I think he was the best receiver there. I still think he's a little bit better than a Ross, but given the current landscape, Justin Ross is obviously the best guy in that conference and on that Clemson team. But it seemed as if Trevor Lawrence loved throwing it to Ross. It was like Ross was his safety blanket, and T. Higgins had his targets as well. But yeah, Justin Ross is just a phenomenal prospect. He's able to do it all. And the fact now that he is going to be the clear-cut number one. He had 106 targets last season with T. Higgins there. So I wouldn't be shocked if Justin Ross is seeing upwards of 115, 120 plus targets, potentially more, right? So I think he's going to have a huge year, and I think it's just the time to have it, right? And I say it on the Devy Delight, where timing's everything. I think he's already solidified himself as a top-tiered wide receiver, but if he comes out and has a absolutely phenomenal year and blows it just out of the water, timing's everything, right? It's going to push you into potentially that first round, NFL draft discussions. Definitely a round 2 type thing. So just going to love to see what he does this year with Trevor Lawrence. The chemistry's there. It's been there for 2 years already, so we're going to see a third year of it. And it's kind of like with Lawrence, like what more can you really say?
Right.
The talent's there. We've seen it. He's proven he can do it. Against top competition, against everyone, it doesn't really make a difference. He's getting it done.
All right, so my top guy is actually your underrated guy, and that I went with Sage Surratt. I thought he was going to come out this year. I know a lot of people, including myself, had him up in my top 10 wide receivers, which I think speaks volumes of how good he was this past year with as deep as this class was. Just did great things for Wake Forest last year. I mean, just looking at it here, 68% catch percentage, went over just a little over 1,000 yards, but 24% of his plays went over 21 yards, which was 16 of them. Shows that he has the big playability. I do think he suffers a little bit from long speed, but he's got the size, catch radius, body control. Some of the ways that he contorts his body in the air to make catches is just ridiculous. Great play strength. Dude is legit. I think I'm going to be interested to see what he does this year. Obviously, he loses, goodness gracious, is Jamie Newman, right? He lost Newman at quarterback, who goes to Georgia. I'm interested to see what happens with him now, having a new quarterback in there, see how all that works out. And if he continues to have as good a year as he did last year or improves, how far he moves himself up. Because I don't see a lot of people talking about him. Now, obviously, you are on him because you have him as your most underrated, which probably speaks more highly of how you think he can raise up the board. How high, say he has just a little bit better year than the year he had this past year, how high up do you think he could move up the charts for you? And we'll just kind of jump right in and talk about him, and we'll bounce back to tight ends.
Yeah, so for me, if he comes out and has, because I mean, he already had a great season this past year. Then he had the injury that kind of caused missing some. I think it was the end of the season, if I remember correctly, kind of missed the rest of that year, but still had over 1,000 yards. He's in my top 10 right now for the draft class and or the upcoming draft class after this one, obviously, and he could move into the top 5 easily for me because I don't remember exactly where I have him. I don't have that pulled up, but I mean, he could easily move into the top 5, and that speaks volumes because when you talk about the other wide receiver prospects that are in that class, 2021 is going to be, I mean, just it's going to be pretty phenomenal. But I think Sage can jump up easily, no question, no hesitation. I think he could easily move into my top 5, potentially even higher, given on how high I am on him. Mm-hmm. Like you said, he's my underrated guy for the receiver position, and I just don't think enough people are talking about him. And it seemed as if he quietly did what he did last year on 98 targets, 11 receiving touchdowns, just quietly did it, right? And no one's really talking about him. And I think he's a guy that you gotta talk about him. And like you said, it's going to be interesting though. He's losing Jamie Newman. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But if he continues that pace that he was on or even improves on it, I mean, there's no reason he can't jump up my board.
All right, who is your tight end? And I'm just going to, this is my tight end too. I didn't even have an underrated one, which I see you have. But go ahead and talk about Brevin Jordan here for your top tight end in the ACC.
Yeah, my top tight end is Brevin Jordan, like you said. He's just athletic, right? And that's what I love to see out of tight ends. And that's what it seems like a lot of colleges are going towards, is kind of getting an athletic, larger person to be their tight end is what it seems like. So someone who's able to block, someone who's able to catch the ball and have a yards after catch. I think that's a big thing for the college aspect of their play calling, right? So he had 35 receptions last year, 495 yards, only had 2 receiving touchdowns. But again, from a tight end position, you're not expecting a whole lot out of the receiving game. But it's always a bonus when you have that. But again, Miami wasn't the greatest of programs. They couldn't really figure out who their quarterback was going to be, and then they would go with the guy this week and he did awesome, and then he didn't the next week. And it was just, honestly, it was kind of a nightmare start to finish for the Miami program, but he was one of those bright spots. He had 23 first downs last year. So I just think from an athleticism standpoint and from what he's able to do, I would love to see more touchdowns, but we got to get a quarterback in there to build that chemistry. So that's a huge aspect. But Brevin Jordan's definitely a guy that is the top tight end. And again, what tight ends are out there at this point. But I love Brevin Jordan. I think he's phenomenal.
Do you think with them getting Derek King over there that will help Brevin at all?
I'll be honest. I haven't been a big King fan.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I don't. I think it. Let me take it to answer your question. Yes, I do think it will because King brings that dual threat ability. So I think defenses are going to have to focus on King a little bit more, which then will open up Jordan for that. Even if it's a 2-3 yard dump off pass, it doesn't make a difference. It's kind of like those halfback screens, right? They're going to use Brevin Jordan, not necessarily in the halfback aspect, but it's just those short yardage, and he's able to get those yards after catch. So I think yes, to ultimately answer your question, I think it will. But it's going to be interesting to see how defenses scheme around that because he does have that dual threat ability. So ultimately the answer is yes, but I'm still a little hesitant on how that whole offense is going to look.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm kind of torn on King. He's a guy that I thought might be good, and then I really don't know what to think about him. I think he's got the skill set, but he really hasn't put it together yet either, which kind of worries me about him. So let's talk about our underrated. And we're probably, unfortunately, going to have to cut it after this because we've gone a little over an hour, and which is not a bad thing. I've loved the discussion that we had. I thought maybe we'd be able to get through more, but maybe we can add the SEC on to. I know we've already talked about possibly doing another episode, so I'm excited to. Nothing wrong with talking Devy on multiple episodes here. So let's talk about, I know we both have the same guy, so I'm just going to go ahead and say Sam Howell of North Carolina, who's just an absolute stud. I know not a lot of people are probably watching North Carolina games, but if you did, this kid, I think, is the future, and I think probably the guy that, at least for me, is going to be sitting at the top of that 2022 class. At least he is for me right now. That could change. Again, as I mentioned, I'm big on Grant Gunnell. You mentioned Keaton Slovis earlier. You've got Jaden Daniels, who I mentioned earlier as well, all coming out in that 2022 class. Could actually be a fairly loaded quarterback class. But Sam Howell's the guy for me. What is it that you like about Sam Howell, and why do you have him as your underrated quarterback?
Yeah, I have him as my underrated simply because no one's talked. I mean, yes, okay, when you get, deeper into the Devy aspect, there are some, people talking about him. But overall, again, no one really watches North Carolina. But I think they're going to be. I think they're going to be a team that does get, those I don't want to call them necessarily primetime games, but they're gonna be on TV more. So I think people are going to finally be able to see what Sam Howell can do. Just seeing a true freshman come out and do what he did. And I think Mack Brown, to me, it's kind of funny. I think he's an underrated coach now. Obviously, when he was at Texas, he was the top of the top, right? He was the best guy, but he retired. And a lot of people, when he went to North Carolina, they're kind of like, well, why would it's North Carolina? The fact that he's able to do what he's done with that program in the short time that he's been there, I think is definitely speaking volumes for his true ability. So he's not so much an underrated coach, but you get my aspect on that. No, just his confidence. I mean, you look at him on the field. It was that Clemson game, if I remember correctly. North Carolina should have won that game. I know. I think Mack Brown kind of blew it at the end. I think Sam Howell's confidence maybe got in the way a little bit. He almost ran it in for that. I think it was a 2-point conversion, but he should have just kicked the extra point. I think it would have given him the tie, go into overtime. You've got the momentum. I think Mack Brown got a little cocky there, but it is Clemson, right? You give Clemson more opportunities. There's no telling what's going to happen. But man, watching his confidence, watching those throws that he can make as a true freshman, he is my QB1 in that 2022 class. He's actually my QB3 overall for Devy, behind Lawrence and Fields. I love Sam Howell that much.
I think I have him 4 behind Jaden Daniels because I like a little bit more of Daniels' rushing ability. But he's right there with me. You could argue he should be over Daniels because of how good he throws the ball compared to Daniels. Really does kind of struggle in that area at times. But yeah, I'm with you. Another reason why I really hope the college football season does not get canceled at all, to just see what this guy can do in his second year again. Him coming in, as you mentioned, a true freshman and doing what he did, taking what is considered one of the better defenses. I mean, look at what they did against a team like Ohio State. Now, yeah, they struggled against LSU, but everybody struggled against LSU.
Everyone did.
Yeah, I mean, and again, Buckeyes bias aside, the Buckeyes had a really good offense, and what that defense was able to do to them, and then Howell came in there, and he didn't light the world on fire, but he still was finding ways to beat them, and they should have, I agree with you, won that game. He proved he can play with the best. I am excited to see what he does moving forward, and I agree with you. I think the Mac Brown aspect is what's really going to help him out because he is a really good coach, and I think having him there to help you progress as well is going to be huge for Howell. I cannot wait to see him continue to progress, and I'm glad that we both have him as our one for the 2022 class because I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Who is your underrated running back?
Yeah, my underrated running back, Deshaun Corbin. He's now at Florida State. He was an A&M running back last year. He went out with a hamstring injury. He missed the rest of the season. I think he played the first 2 or 3 games and then got hurt. But man, he's able to do it in all aspects. He's a physical runner. He's fast. He returned some punts, some kick returns. So he's able to do it all around the field. I think Florida State, losing Cam Akers, I think Florida State is not going to miss a beat in the running back aspect. I think Corbin, is not talked about enough. Yes, when you go out with an injury and you miss a whole season, of course, no one's going to really talk about you in depth. But being the A&M fan that I am seeing him play multiple years, I think he's going to show a lot of people this year kind of what his true abilities are. Hopefully, again, barring any setbacks as far as injury, as long as he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a guy that a lot of people are going to talk about. Again, flying under the radar. That's just kind of what a lot of these guys are doing. He's going to be someone you can probably snatch up, in your mid to late rounds, rookie drafts, Devy drafts, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
But Corbin out of Florida State, I think is definitely going to be a guy to keep an eye on. He does it in the pass catching game, physical runner. I think he's pretty phenomenal around the field.
I went with the guy who's going to be replacing Etienne, I believe, after he leaves this year, and that's DeMarcus Bowman. He's the number 2 running back in the nation. He committed to Clemson this year. They seem to be really excited about him, talking about how he is a generational talent. His speed is just ridiculous. I'm excited to see if he gets any run this year. I would imagine they may just end up trying to run Etienne in the ground, but I would not be surprised if we get to see a little bit of Bowman. And with as good as we've seen this Clemson offense be since Dabo Swinney has taken over with what they did with Deshaun Watson, Kelly Bryant, now Trevor Lawrence, I'm excited to see what Bowman can do. I will say, if I wouldn't necessarily draft him in Devy drafts, I don't advocate drafting freshman running backs in your Devy drafts because you're having to wait likely at least 3 years, and there's other guys you can take ahead of him. But he's a guy with the ACC that I don't think is entirely loaded with a bunch of talent. He's a guy that I'm interested to see what happens with him. I do think he's going to get some run at some point in time this year, and I'm interested to see what he does. Who is your underrated wide receiver?
Yeah, it was Sage Surratt. As we said earlier, I think he's just a guy that's gonna boost up his draft stock. In my opinion, definitely move up my draft board if he has another repeat of what he's done, last season, barring no setbacks as far as injuries go. I think he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, mine was okay. You'll probably know his name. So if I say it wrong, please correct me. Is it Dami Brown from North Carolina?
That sounds right. I'll be honest. I'm with you on the name pronunciation.
Okay, got you.
So
he obviously benefited last year. He's a junior this year. Benefited last year as a sophomore from, as you just talked about earlier, with Sam Howell, kind of his aggressiveness and willingness to throw the ball down the field. I think those two are going to grow even more together this year. He's very physical, big-bodied guy, 6'1", 195. Really strong on the break, can break tackles, really good body control and athleticism. Does struggle with drops a little bit, which worries me. Obviously, that's the biggest thing for a wide receiver. But if he can improve on that, I think he's a guy some of us will be talking about going into probably like a tier 2 wide receiver just because of his ability and then obviously what Sam Howell can do for him as well. So he's an underrated guy in this conference. I've not seen anybody talk about it all. So that's kind of why I wanted to go. It was more also attached to how good we think Sam Howell is as well. Tight end, do you have somebody you want to mention for the tight ends before we get out of here?
Yeah, so the guy, again, I went the same route of kind of just going into the 2020 high school prospects and seeing kind of what we were looking at there. Notre Dame got a 5-star prospect, Michael Mayer. I forgot where he's out of, but he's the number 2 tight end in the class. He's that, like I said, 5-star prospect, and he's a 31st ranked player overall. When you look at Notre Dame's tight end history, they've sent some pretty solid guys to the NFL, and I went and looked at a little bit deeper. And of the last 8 tight ends that they've had go to the NFL, 5 of them were drafted in the first or the second round, and of those 5, 3 of them were 4-star prospects. So none of the last 8, none of them were 5-star prospects. Again, now coaching schemes, play calling, players on the team always change, right? So just the fact that he's a 5-star prospect does not mean he's going to be the best tight end to ever come through Notre Dame. That's not what I'm saying necessarily, but just the fact that Notre Dame as a whole has seemed to put some pretty solid tight ends into the NFL. I think he's a guy to definitely keep an eye on. Again, we're talking, 3 years down the road potentially before he even makes it to the NFL. And with the tight ends, even once they get to the NFL, they usually take about another, let's call it 2 to 3 years to really start to mold themselves, unless, like you said, Evan Ingram, right? You're going to have the guy that comes in pretty much immediately and then does his thing, but now not so much. So tight ends is just one of those positions. But Michael Mayer, he'll be a true freshman going into Notre Dame, 5-star prospect. He's just someone to keep an eye on throughout the years, for sure.
Yeah, I like it. So I hate that we couldn't get to the SEC. We're going almost an hour and 20 minutes here. I hate that we couldn't get to them because I actually had some A&M guys, and I was kind of surprised you didn't. I was really excited to get to talk to you about them. I assume it's because you didn't want to be too homerism.
I tried not to.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So that's why I threw him on there, because I'm big on Spiller. And is it Dem? Yeah, there we go.
I love him.
Yeah, so I put them on my list because I like them as well, and I was like, I want to get your opinions on them, but I'm sure we can find a way to do this again. We'll make sure to get the SEC in, maybe SEC in the best conference in all the land in the Big Ten. We'll talk about them because Ohio State's got some guys that I want to talk about, because I am not a good analyst like you, and I will be very, very biased in all of my decisions for the Big Ten. But I'm excited. I'm glad that we got to do this. I'm excited that I will get a chance to jump on with you guys here soon and talk Big Ten, and I'm looking forward to getting you back on here again so we can do some more of this. Plug everything you want to all of our listeners, where they can find you on Twitter, talk more about the Devy Delight, anything you want. Go ahead, let our listeners know where they can find you anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah, so I'm definitely on Twitter, at Stoops1990. It's STOOPS, just like the coach. At Stoops1990 on Twitter. I've got the Devy Delight with my buddy Ricky. Love it, man. I've been doing Devy, it's only been about 2 or 3 years since I've been in the whole Devy aspect, but as soon as I found out about it, I came in as quick as I could. Because again, I've watched college football my entire life. I absolutely love it. So I do some cut-ups, video cut-ups for Dynasty nerds. I absolutely love doing that. It's kind of a slower time, with 2020 class and kind of trying to figure out what we're doing there. But I do some cut-ups. Absolutely love doing that. That's it, though. I mean, I try and stay as active on Twitter as I can. I've definitely retweet, I comment, I post some cut-ups of, some little clips with some stats from Expand the Box Score. They're the ones that help us out with Devy Delight. So definitely go there. And you can get 10% off your subscription if you do capital letters Stoops on your subscription. So little plug there. But no, man, I appreciate you having me on, and we'll definitely get it going. The SEC, the best conference, we definitely got to talk about them. So we'll definitely make it happen 100%. All
right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking your time out of your Friday to do this, and we will definitely get something set up and continue running this series and keep praying that everything since we both live in Texas, everything starts to blow over here soon, and for sure we get some college football. But seriously, as I mentioned earlier, stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to talking to you again, man. Have a good one.
You too. Appreciate it.
Prepare for glory! I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I came out the womb, I was ready. And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly. Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
Xfinity XFi is more than just fast. It's internet that gives you peace of mind security. Because if it's connected, it's protected. Yeah, even your robot vacuum. Can your internet do that? Learn more at xfinity.com/xfi.
5-Hour Energy is energy on the go. Well, what if you're not going anywhere for a while? Then 5-Hour Energy is for getting stuff done while you're stuck at home, like doing an honest day's work for your boss. Getting rid of old clothes.
Oh, my old bell bottoms.
Scouring the grout in your shower. Working out on that old stationary bike. And so much more. Go to the store or order online at shop5hourenergy.com. 5 Hour Energy. Energy for hunkering down.